In 1985, 12 parents didn't know that they could parent their own children on what to watch, sat in a circle at the Christian Church Day School in Manhattan to voice their issues with television shows being aimed for kids. They called this meeting the He-Man Workshop.
He-Man and the Masters of the Universe.
I'm worried about the one-dimension characters in the He-Man TV show, said a father of a child around the age of 4. Why can't all the powerful heroes like He-Man have a sense of humor also? He asked the group. But it seems the father had only been watching his child watch the show and didn't watch the show himself. If he had, he would have found within minutes, if not seconds, that the now classic cartoon series had a lot of humor from He-Man and others.
Boy, did that hurt.
Silence, you fuddy fool! I've had it with your whining and bumbling.
Christmas 1985 was coming up, and parents were heading to the stores to buy kids merchandise from He-Man and other television shows that their kids loved. However, one show had parents upset, and it had no toys yet, and the promised cartoon series had not even aired. The gun-toting Green Beret John Rambo was coming from his big screen R-rated hit to a new half-hour animated cartoon series aimed at kids. Just the news of this show, plus its planned toy line, upset some parents, like those 12 that had gathered at the event at the Christ United Methodist Church on Park Avenue. As a parent, I find this offensive, said Maddie Freeman, a development psychologist at the day school. The Rambo cartoon show would not start for about 6 more months, with the Clico action figure line hitting stores about the same time. But for many parents, their mind was made up on what harm this show and its toy line would do to the kids. This was a cartoon based on an R-rated movie. Did it really belong as a kids' cartoon series? The movie was a massive hit, and Rambo had become one of the most iconic characters of 1985, almost overnight. Kids, parents, even people that had never seen the film knew who John Rambo was. Sure, he killed a lot of people and dropped a few F-bombs, but was he really all that bad? Rambo is a symbol of good. He is very patriotic. He stands for strength that only does good, and he undoes evil, said Amy Cashin, a spokeswoman for the production of the upcoming cartoon series.
But if freedom and justice are to survive, the only hope is with Rambo and the Force of Freedom. Fighting alongside Rambo is Colonel Troutman, the toughest CO in the Special Forces. Turbo, an electronics whiz, whose inventions keep the Force of Freedom one step ahead of Savage. Cat, she's always ready to swing into action. And the White Dragon, who, unlike his evil twin brother, uses his ninja powers only for good. The battle will be fierce. It'll be fought on the land and in the air. But with Rambo and the Force of Freedom, justice and liberty will never surrender, no matter what the odds. Rambo.
Amy Cashin went on to explain to worried parents that the cartoon series is not directly involved with the Rambo film, and that the cartoon is its own separate thing and will not be violent. Like the movie, Rambo will have giant muscles, but that's about where it ends. This Rambo is a guy that loves his nation and never looks for trouble, she told the New York Times. She did admit that the show would be a sales tool to help sell the action figures, something that was very common with TV shows in the 80s. He-Man, G.I. Joe, Transformers, almost every action figure line had a cartoon series to go along with it to help sales. I would say in the term of boys between the ages of 3 and 5, they have a national obsession for toys that they see on TV. Peg Marble, the school director, said, "Kids are uniquely vulnerable at this age," she would tell the New York Times. The parents were upset, but it wasn't just about cartoons being sold to sell toys to kids. It was the message in those cartoons. That message, according to them, was that these cartoons were telling kids that violence was the way to resolve conflict. G.I. Joe, Hasbro, Thundercats, according to them, all these cartoons would use violence to fix any problems that the characters had. The characters of the He-Man show, they are devoid of human characteristics They have no emotion, no humor. They make kids idolize those qualities. Peggy Marble would add, showing that she really had never watched the show. In 1985, He-Man and Masters of the Universe had an average audience of almost 3 million households across the country. If her claims were true, that's a lot of kids that were being brainwashed by He-Man and his foes. On the other side of the country, in California, a mock funeral was being held for parents to bury their kids' violent toys and boycott companies that were selling those related toys. We try not to have He-Man hurt any living creatures, and the good guys always win, said the president of Film Nation, the studio behind the He-Man cartoon series, adding that He-Man does make mistakes, and he admits to them when he does, and gives children a lot of positive messages. He points out that the show has done stories on drug use, child molestation, and even gun control.
And you know what? There aren't any magic drugs either. Anytime you take one from anybody but your parents or your doctor, you're taking a very big chance. You're gambling with your health, maybe even your life.
But it seems a lot of the parents upset had only seen the show in passing and only saw the violence. Paul Cleveland, a senior vice president of marketing for Mattel, said that the criticism of He-Man was unfair. Having good guys and bad guys did not start with He-Man. Little boys have been playing that way for thousands of years. He said, and then added that He-Man is a lot less violent than past cartoons like the Roadrunner. It's not just being what's seen that's hurting the kids, said Peggy Carreran, the president of Action of Children Television. These shows are not thought up by people trying to create characters or tell a story. They're just a lone commercial to sell toys. Peggy went on to say that she was not a fan of censorship of these shows, but she was in strong favor of creating more diversity. So she was supporting a bill to Congress that would force television broadcasters to air diverse child programming. The bill will require television stations to provide 7 hours a week of programming that enhanced a child's education, with 5 of the 7 hours being on weekends. But He-Man had morals and stood for good. But according to Dr. Jamon Singer, a psychiatrist at Yale University, that message was lost on smaller kids. Young kids just don't get it, and we see that in how they play with their toys. When they play with the He-Man action figures, He-Man is very aggressive, beating up his enemies with no real reason. He would tell the New York Times.
Dolts, half-wits, bunglers, brainless idiots. You couldn't even beat a motley group of gnomes.
We have heard from parents, educators, and people in the community that they're very concerned about these shows, and we need an alternative to those bad shows, said Senator Lattenberg, who was a strong supporter of the bill. These shows like He-Man is against good taste and good judgment, and the kids have no choice but to watch it, he told the New York Times, forgetting about those two knobs on the television. A spokesman for the National Association of Broadcasters, who represented more than 875 television stations, said they were not against the parents or the senator, but have problems with the bill. Most of us at our home receive about 9 TV channels, and some of those are educational stations. There are plenty of things a parent can watch with their kids if they feel He-Man and shows like it are doing harm, he told the New York Times. The bill would not pass in 1985, but in 1990 the Children's Television Educational Act was passed by Congress that would put registration on advertising during children's television shows and enforce the obligation to broadcasters to meet educational and informational needs for the child audience. Sometimes it's easier to meet in a group, complain to your senator, and get new laws passed than being seen as the bad guy in your kids' eyes by telling them what they can and cannot watch, or sitting down with them to explain the good and bad messages of a television show. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, thumb up so I know you like my content, subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk again soon.
It's called love. When you care deeply about others, when you're kind and gentle, then you're using the power. And that's very special magic indeed. Until later, goodbye for now.
Junkman.
Thank you, sir, for that unsolicited testimony.